homelessness cases reported, 75% of 15,667 cases reported was solely among men, and the majority of those men who have sex with men. Reflecting data from countries with reliable tracking systems, a report in 2008 by the World Health Organization reported 500 million cases of curable sexually transmitted diseases, 21.6 million unsafe abortions that were undoubtedly the result of unwanted pregnancies. And that same report, and I'm sorry I don't have more current figures, I tried, but I couldn't find them. The report attributes the growth in unsafe abortions to be due mainly to the growing population of reproductive age. Not poverty, or lack of access to safer sex information or contraception. No, it's because there are more young women of reproductive age. Really. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that a simple conversation about and our willingness to talk about the pleasure and consequences of sex will slow down world population growth, cure AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases, and eliminate unsafe abortions. But I do believe that keeping sex in the confessional will make policy change incremental and ineffective. Women have unwanted pregnancies and unsafe abortions because they have unprotected sex and or no access to contraceptives. People of all races, ages, genders, and nationalities get HIV primarily through unprotected sex. Sexually transmitted diseases are not something you catch on a urinal, people. Policymakers, government officials, scientists, and activists such as ourselves engaged in the day-to-day struggle to make safe sex for millions of people need to be explicit and unrelenting in our pursuit of sexual health education and contraception as a human right and obligation, not something anyone can opt out of because a parent or a minister is still stuck in the 19th century. And to do that, we have to be willing to rid ourselves of the puritanical confessional and the hypocrisy that puts talk of sex and pleasure by and for the people in a straitjacket. We need to lift up all the voices of people of color engaged in efforts to bring our sexuality out of the shame and titillation that it has been buried in. We need to embolden our people, whoever they are, to embrace and celebrate their sexuality and to talk about it with their friends and family, with their lovers, with their partners, with their congregations, for heaven's sake, with their legislators. When abortion or reproductive choice or contraception or sexual health education are being threatened by legislative action, state bureaucracy, or indifference. We need to put an end to the absurdity of abstinence-only policies here and everywhere. They don't work. They run contrary to human nature and represent the worst of confessional, fear-ridden approaches to both population control and disease prevention. It is human suicide, and we need to stop it. And a much broader level, because I have to wrap up because we do have time. If we're serious about creating a broader audience for Alliance on Sexual Freedom and Sexual Health, then the dialogue that we have to engage our sisters and brothers of color, or the dialogue that we have to engage the political community, organized labor, educators at every level, unorganized civil rights workers, college students, people in welfare waiting rooms, is about the truth of who we are. The whole truth. The sex part, and the race part, and the class part, and the gender part. And we can't leave any of those parts out. The dialogue about racism in America has to be about more than whether or not we will use offensive language, but about how together, white and of color, we will end the subjugation by political and economic force of white people over people of color. And so too must the dialogue between ourselves and America and the global community be about how we will choose to be subject and object in our sexual lives. How we will achieve and sustain sexual health. Because we can't be free if we can't do that. You know, there's daily reference to terrorists in our news. As a lesbian, a woman, and a person of color, I am fully aware of actions intended to terrorize by instilling fear. I know from the fabric of my own life what it feels like to be afraid of walking down any given street and fear for my safety. I know what it feels like to disguise my appearance so those who would do me harm will not recognize me. I know what hiding feels like. I know the numbing waves of rage that flow through me when people murder boys, gay boys, and transgender women, whose only sin is a desire to love and the hope of living and working in the light of day without fear. I know that terrorists are not desperate and hate-filled people living in caves thousands of miles away. They are not. They're right here at home. They wear hoods and burn crosses on lawns. They wield baseball bats or knives and murder people whose gender and sexual orientation frightens or disgusts them. They bomb churches and synagogues and mosques. They bomb women's health clinics and stalk abortion providers and shoot them in the back, right here in the United States of America. And, I know that none of that is going to keep me or you from our commitment to sexual freedom and sexual health. What I ask is that you do that work with an unrelenting push to lift the veil of shame and secrecy over sexuality from the public domain. To talk to administrators of public health, educators, legislators, judges, doctors, everybody, about the need that we have to engage in this very fundamental human need and universal right as a celebration of our spirit, and not something that we ever need to take back to the confessional because it doesn't belong there. I am blessed to do the work that I do. I'm blessed to work with people like Kendra and the staff of In Our Own Voices. I'm blessed to know that throughout this vast and great state of ours, there are services for youth and transgender people in Buffalo community centers throughout the state, services for homeless youth, services for LGBT families, services for our elders in New York City and Syracuse and Long Island, and opportunities to learn about sexual health for LGBT people in safe and nurturing environments throughout the state. The Health and Human Services Initiative is part of the answer to the conversation about sex and our health that we need to broaden. And I thank all of you who do that work. Finally, I hear a lot of queers, screaming about, being called not normal. And they say, well, we are so normal. And I have no aspiration to be normal. I don't. Gave that up a long time ago. I embrace the oddity in me and the oddity in many of you in this room, because if we were brave enough and have enough love, it is the odd ones who will inspire the creation of new ways to love and live and uphold the dignity of our sexuality. I imagine a world where wars for oil will end and the sun will be our only source of energy. I imagine a world where those children that I love so much won't have to face the melting of the ice caps. I imagine a world where all children will have the knowledge and access to technology and sexual health that our scientific community is capable of providing right now. I imagine a world without AIDS. I imagine a world where healthcare, Social Security, and other benefits are not tied to marriage. I imagine a world where there is no pregnancy is unwanted. I imagine a world where no child is bullied because of who he desires or her gender expression. I imagine a world where sexual freedom and sexual health will be everyone's right and not the privilege of those who can afford it. Let us create that world. Thank you so much.